Welcome to HB RV Lifestyle, the podcast. I am the host, the Honey Badger, here to give it to you straight and transparent about the RV business, as well as other things. Today, I'm going to do things a little differently. I received an email from an email address, Lippert Lies at protonmail.com. That's Lies. Lippert Lies at protonmail.com. And I found this email with a ton of inaccuracies. It's a very misleading email. And I've had a couple people reach out to me, and I've reached out to some other folks on social media, and they have received this same email. And it looks legit. Okay, first glance, it looks very legit, but very misleading information. Okay, I'm here to correct that information. Now, as you guys know, I'm very fair. You know, I'm not on the far Armageddon side of things. I'm not the sunshine and rainbows guy. Okay, never have been, never will be. Okay. And just to give some context, especially if this is the first time you're watching my podcast or listening to my podcast, whether it's on Spotify, Amazon, wherever you're getting this podcast from, I'm not one of the corporate RV dealership YouTubers that tells you everything's perfect and I've never seen it before. And oh my God, I know they've built it for like 10 freaking years, but it's like looking at it for the first time. I mean, I'm not that guy. And I'm also not the person that tells everybody what a pile of crap everything is. And even with all the problems, all the frame failure and frame flex problems that Grand Design is having with the solitude and the momentum and some reflections, we all know that story. And we all know about JD's interview with Lippert themselves. But let me read this email because I have a feeling that a lot of you are going to get this email and you're going to take it as gospel. And I want to make sure that there's context in what they're saying, okay? So it says, and this is Lippert Lies, Lies, at protonmail.com. Does Lippert really only use 100% American steel? As RV ambassador and influencers, you owe it to us, the consumers and owners, to be honest and help us out. By now, think we all can agree the RV industry is suffering from very poor manufacturing. I do not agree with that. It's not across the board, okay? And that's the first really inaccuracy of this email is, yes, I've talked about certain products and their recalls and certain products and frame failure and frame flex and things of that nature. Let's set Grand Design aside for a minute. Let's put them completely out of the picture as if they don't exist. The Armageddon level problems in the industry are extremely small. Okay? You could put all kinds of gadgets on a travel trailer and a motorhome and a toy hauler, and it's still an earthquake on wheels. It still bounces around. It's towed behind. You know, most of the RVs sold in the United States and Canada are towable RVs. That's the majority of them. And they bounce around behind a truck. They're not the truck with air ride suspension and all these cool little gadgets, and even trucks and cars break down. So yes, but they're not suffering that's too broad of a general statement. There are pockets of problems. Nobody builds a perfect coach. Nobody builds one. Okay? There's no such thing. Never has been a such thing. Even the John Crane Fleetwoods were not perfect. They're a great coach. That Bounder was built like a tank. It was ugly as hell, but it was built like a tank. But it doesn't mean things didn't go wrong. Okay, that's why we have a saying in this industry that when you get into this, you need a small toolkit and a sense of humor. Sometimes hinges comes off. Sometimes trim pops out. Sometimes your water pump might need to be tightened. Sometimes you might have to change out your pressure regulator or your regulator on your propane, etc. Okay? So I've always said that the Armageddon side of the industry is not as big as it's made out to be because of this isolated problem with realistically one manufacturer. Okay? But we all can agree the RV industry is suffering cheap parts and deceptive warranties. I disagree with the deceptive warranties part. Okay? First off, be very clear, the supermajority of RV industry, RV manufacturers, that warranty is black and white. There's no gray areas. Okay? If you actually go and open up your warranty packet and read through the whole thing, or if you get the digital copy, some people have digital copies, it's black and white. Okay? Now, deceptive service stuff with dealerships, that may be a different scenario. Okay? We're not talking, and we're excluding the Grand Design frame warranty stuff. We're not talking about that right now. We're talking about just that was a general statement saying that they buy cheap parts and they have deceptive warranties. That's not true of the entire industry. That's not true. Do some use cheaper material than others? Sure. Are they deceptive in their warranty practices? It's black and white. Whatever happens, here's what's interesting. Whatever happens between a service department and a factory is between the service department and the factory. Now, I've said several times there's always disconnects that happen. It happens with Ford, it happens with Chevy, it happens with GMC, it happens with Toyota, it happens with everybody. Boats, RVs, cars, trucks, it all happens. Okay? But that right there is too broad of a statement that doesn't tell the whole story. Okay? We need your influence to help us, the customers. By now, think most can agree Grand Design is a day late and $1 short. However, what about Lippert? Do you all think they're also not a part of the problem? If so, let me ask you one simple question. Now, that's a broad statement. Is Grand Design a day late and $1 short? Probably. More than likely, with a lot of stuff they did, they're playing defense and trying to play catch up. Lippert is caught in the middle of all of it. Okay? Let's just leave it at that. We've talked about enough about that. Do I think they're partially responsible? Of course I do. Do I think they're 90% of the problem? Absolutely not. I think their part to play is small. That's how I feel from the industry point, right? A lot of you out there want to scream to high heaven, and I understand. I'm not going to bash you for it. It's freedom of speech. Do what you got to do. Okay? But does Lippert only use 100% American steel as they say? As many of you know, this question was recently addressed by @BigTruckBigRV during his interview with Lippert Management. He'll put the link to the video. I'll put that link in the description of this if you guys want to see that later. Does Lippert use imported steel? Answer number 1, not sure. It's domestic steel. I don't know. There are many components that are imported. Okay. Can't definitively state if these answers are true or not. However, there is an awful lot of evidence which clearly proves Lippert imports steel and steel goods from Asia, mainly China. Okay, we're going to stop right there. A lot of components on everything comes from China or Mexico. Okay, now, I had a good conversation through direct message. I'm not going to mention the person's name. That's unfair. It's a private conversation. But one of the pieces of conversation that we had was there's a company called SDI, Steel Dynamics Inc., if I remember correctly. a lot of people from Ford to Chevy to boat manufacturers to agriculture trailers like Dynamax or Diamond Sea or whatever they're called, as well as Lippert, buy steel from them. They are an American company. So what I did was I did a little bit of homework. Okay? Didn't take me long to find it because almost all the import-export stuff is public record, especially on a publicly traded company. SDI, we'll call them SDI, does not buy steel from China or have it imported from China. If you look at the import records, and you guys can look this up yourself, they're mainly come from South America, which shocked me, and from South Africa and Belgium. Not one source of import of steel came from mainland Asia that I could find this year, and the records I think go back up to 2 years. I couldn't find one. Mainly European countries, mainly South African countries, and mainly South American countries. Now here's the interesting that was said, okay, because we had a great thing. I'm going to read this to you guys, okay? Because the guy I talked to does like daily homework stuff. He's really, really good. And he says, so I dug into this because a lot of people worried about recycled steel and stuff, okay? So I dug into this. Recycled steel is generally made from junked vehicles. They separate the different materials and minerals using complex processes. This is because the U.S. government limits how much new/mined steel can be mined and used in steel production due to environmental impact. So what that's, and I'm going to let me read that one more time so everybody gets it. This is because the U.S. government limits how much new/mined metal can be mined and used in steel production due to environmental impact. So basically, if a company like SDI or any mill company in the United States wants to produce steel, they have 3 choices. They can either, number one, max out how much steel they can really get mined because of government regulation. Number 2, they can recycle the steel as well. Or number 3, they import it. So we're not talking about the actual manufacturer that's using it for like bridges and cars and RVs and boats and etc. We're not talking about those companies. Those companies are buying from an American company. But the raw materials are being imported because our government doesn't allow them to basically mine a bunch of steel. Now, that's a political thing. I'm just going to say one thing about it. It's just like with oil, right? Hey, so it's better that we go let everybody else mine steel in other countries, but it's bad if the United States does it. I mean, I'm sorry. I had to throw that in there. It's kind of funny. He also, the person also said, and I said that makes sense, and he said also a big source of recycled steel is old bridges, ships, buildings, and railroads. So I believe that, again, this is a very deceptive email that was sent out, and I think it's kind of, now, again, I could be wrong. The people behind this, if you can prove me wrong, okay? But I believe this is a bunch of propaganda, anti-Lippert, anti-RV business. And, I understand people's anger and questioning. It's okay to question companies and what they do. But to go as far as, like when you look at the import-export of Lippert components, a lot of stuff that they're buying from foreign countries themselves are things like, I don't know, right here. Machinery, air conditioning units, garden seats, camping equipment, Come on. A lot of this stuff is little things, like little component things that I believe they probably resell to the RV factories, right, for assembly purposes. If I had to take a guess, if you actually looked at Lippert's business holdings, I would probably guess they own some of these companies, or at least have a stake inside some of these companies that are sending them components overseas. So again, we have to look at a perspective of there's a lot of anger out there, tons of it, tons of anger, and it doesn't mean that this is 100% accurate. Okay. The number 2 thing they say is China made Lippert RV axles. Clearly has the Lippert name and the made in China stamp. Okay. So when you look at the listing they put on there, it says hot sale trailer axle, Lippert axles, semi-trailer axle. So when you scroll down, if you get this email, it basically is what I call an SEO keyword situation. Somebody on some site, kind of like eBay or Amazon, is using keywords, hot sale, trailer axle, Lippert trailer axles, as if, and again, I could be wrong, but this looks like to me like a lot of advertisements I get when I'm trying to shop parts. Some company from another country like China, like Japan, trying to earn my business because they're undercutting the American company and offering free shipping or cheap shipping or whatever the case may be. Okay, so that's kind of not, and it's from madeinchina.com. That's kind of weird. And then here's the other one they put. They put an auto level system, and it says Lippert style fifth wheel auto leveling system. It doesn't say it's Lippert himself. It's a Lippert style. So again, very misleading that you're trying to make a connection to something that even the keywords in the advertisements say, whoa, hold on. That doesn't say it's a Lippert component. It says a Lippert style component. Okay. Number 5, even in Lippert's stock filings with the SEC, you can find several documents which clearly indicate and confirm how dependent their business is on importing raw and unfinished materials from other countries, mostly steel, aluminum, glass, and mainly from China. Now, let me tell you, this email is full of grammar mistakes, okay? Number 2, yeah, they might get some aluminum and some steel and some stuff to make some of their own little components. I've never been to the Lippert factories where they make the actual components or the frames, but I would assume that the steel probably is to make some of the other components. Some of the aluminum is to make the other components. The glass, obviously, to make windows, right? So are they dependent on China? Guys, a ton of RV factories, a ton of factories in general are dependent on China. Look how much COVID screwed us up. COVID screwed us up so bad as a world in every industry because we were dependent on China. Has that dependence lessened? Probably not. I mean, let's be real. I mean, there's stuff imported from Mexico, Brazil, Argentina. There's stuff, from North Africa, Eastern Europe, Japan, Australia. There's places that import stuff from all over the world to assemble things here in the United States and assemble things in Mexico and etc. This is the world we live in. And it goes back to what was said earlier. The U.S. government limits how much stuff we can do. These companies can't strictly just go to our own mines and start mining steel. That's not the way it works. Just like they can't simply go out and say, hey, there's an oil area, let's drill oil. Our government whether you love them or not, is restricting a lot of this stuff where companies are dependent on foreign countries for certain things. Okay? So that in 2022, we imported or purchased from suppliers who imported approximately 45% of our raw materials and components. Consequently, we rely on the free flow of goods through open and operational ports and on a consistent basis for a significant portion of our raw materials and components. Yeah. But they buy the steel for the frame from two companies here in the United States. And those two companies buy it from, they obviously recycled steel, and then you got, new fresh steel that's made here and mined here in the United States. And then you got the stuff they import from South America, South Africa, and etc. Right? Raw materials and components used in manufacture of Furrion products are provided by a small group of suppliers that are principally located in China. Yes, we understand that. Okay? And they give links and everything else. All of you have worked hard to earn the respect of the RV industry. Most importantly, you have also earned our attention and our most precious resource, our time. You guys can make a difference. First off, I'm going to make this very, very clear. I do not support this email. This email is full of inconsistencies, bad grammar, and misleading information. In fact, I'm tempted to send this to Lippert and let them know, hey, this is what you're up against. Because this is the reality of things. Trying to connect the dots. Look, I've given every company crap. Okay? No one is immune to me calling them out for stupidity. But this is not going to cut the mustard. Okay? This email, if you receive it, you can do your own due diligence. I would respect you if you did your own due diligence. But just take this email with a grain of salt. This is somebody taking information that may or may not be true, or might be half true, or might be sprinkled with 10% truth and 90% twisting it into their own thing. I don't know, because I don't know who they are. I can't find a Facebook page. I can't find a social media. Those are the things that red flag me. When somebody sends an email out like this, okay, and I want to read the description for Proton Mail. Okay, I was reading this earlier. So I put Proton Mail advantages. Safe from spam and phishing, FishGuard blocks, password protection, hide my email address. It's just, man. I mean, I'm normally, like, when you go online and you go to Facebook groups, there's a group for everything. There's a group for frame failure. There's a group for DIY projects in the RV industry. There's toy hauler groups. There's groups of owners that may do rallies or may do things like that. All really good stuff. Even if it's about problems, it's still good information because it comes directly normally from the owners. When I have that kind of email with that kind of email address, and I can't find anything keyword wise on Facebook or Instagram or anything of that nature, it throws a red flag in my head. Because look, guys, let's be real. This is the last thing I'm going to say for tonight. Let's be real about this, okay? The world as we know it is struggling. Most economies are not in a good place. Most businesses in the United States are not in a good place. You had Lazy Days RV lose $20+ million. You had Winnebago lose almost $13 million. You've had bad earnings reports from several big major corporations that are not even in the RV industry. It is not a pretty picture out there. No matter how much politicians want to spin things. Okay? It's not a pretty picture out there. And my gut tells me that this is meant to be a malicious attack to try to sway investors from Lippert. This is an email with information that is half put together, that it looks like they're trying to hurt or trying to get information out there through social media to try to drive Lippert's stock price down. That's what I think. And you guys know I'm not the biggest fan on God's green earth of anybody, okay? And I'm not anybody's protector or defender. But that's the reality. The reality is this email is subjugated, trying to basically get guys like me to, give it clout and give it, a boom forward. And the reality is it's just full of too many inaccuracies. You guys can decide for yourselves, as always. I did the homework. You can do the homework. Just be aware that, there's always two sides to a story with this. Okay? I'm pretty sure when I send this over to Jason Lippert, he's going to, I should say the Lippert team in general, I'm pretty sure they'll have some kind of response to it. Okay? They'll probably do it on their own because I don't bring anybody on the podcast or anything like that. But I really believe that, yeah. So anyway, until next time, have a good night.